Chapter 3. We're chugging along. All right, we're going to get talking about ecology in this chapter. And this is getting to the fun stuff. All right, so let's do this. Let's start with the basics. Let's do some basic definitions. So we're going to obviously be talking about ecosystems. Now, the key thing to remember about ecosystems is that it includes the abiotic, non-living, and biotic parts of that area. And ecosystems can be large, they can be small. Most of the time it's always going to be dependent on a climate or microclimate in some part. Just think, like if you go to Port A or down to Corpus, then that environment down there, that's a different ecosystem. That's a coastal system. You've got the salt water right there, all right, on the Gulf of Mexico. Here in San Antonio, we're obviously very different. We're in the foot of the hill country here. Some ecosystems and like caves and lakes, they have very, very distinctive boundaries. So it's like obviously like that cave might very well have very specific species that are unique. Islands have very distinctive boundaries as well. Then you also have some cases where there's going to be overlap. This picture here kind of shows you some of the basic major ones, and we will get to this, all right? But I just wanted to put this on here so you can kind of see like deserts. Those ecosystems may be very distinctive as well. However, there's going to be a lot of overlap too. So along the coast, if you think back, if you've ever been down to the coast, think about what you see. You have the marshy areas, you have more of the open water areas, you have right along the beach. So you have the intertidal zone as an example of where two ecosystems really overlap. And there's going to be an interaction there. Here in San Antonio, you could have mixing of ecosystems along the riverways, along the coasts there, and you can have boggy areas mixing in with more where the water moves a lot faster, especially and like on the south parts of town, there's areas where that happens. So it is absolutely natural. So and ecosystems can be multiple sizes. They could be tiny. So the one on the right is an example of a very, very minute ecosystem. And it's literally just a knot on a tree. But then you can have large ecosystems, such as what we experience up in the Yellowstone National Park area, where it is a lot of land, a lot of area, open ocean, huge ecosystem. All right, so now let's kind of talk about what are the different parts. Well, energy has to flow through ecosystems. And in that, where it all is based off of is obviously sun and our light energy. And producers use that energy, obviously, through photosynthesis to create food and energy. Amazingly enough, they produce oxygen as a waste product, and we use it, and as do other animals and organisms. And I like this picture because it shows you the difference between photosynthesis and respiration. And basically, they're opposites of each other. So photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide and water, turns it into oxygen and glucose and energy. But respiration, watch, it starts with those. It starts with the oxygen. It starts with that glucose. And then our bodies use it and we expend carbon dioxide and water. So basically opposites of each other. It's pretty cool. All right, and this is exactly what I was just kind of going over and comparing. But here's the deal. Luckily, we have a net excess of oxygen in the world. And because there are so many producers, it's one of the reasons why we don't want to cut down so many trees, right? Hint, hint. Now, we're going to take that and we're going to talk about trophic levels. Troph means eat. So trophic levels, food chains, and food webs. Yes, we're going to kick it back to 7th grade here. So let's start, you know these. What's a consumer? They're heterotrophs. Hetero means different. So they eat different things. And so we as an example, we get our food and our energy from consuming other organisms. There are things like primary consumers. They're going to be the ones that they're the first levels. They're the herbivores. They eat the producers. They eat the grass, they eat the leaves, they eat the roots of the plant, the fruits, whatever. Secondary consumers eat the primary consumers. Tertiary consumers eat secondary consumers. Not every ecosystem will have up to tertiary consumers. That's not always going to be present or prevalent. A lot of times we are considered to be tertiary consumers. So here's a few examples, right, of showing the different trophic levels. So we have an example here on the left where we have terrestrial and aquatic food chains showing how the energy is moving up through these different trophic levels. And then on the right-hand side, we're just having it kind of in a pyramid format for you to look at and use. Now, these guys, they get a bad rap. These are very important parts of the food chain and food webs. We absolutely need decomposers. We absolutely need those scavengers and those detritivores. So scavengers are things that consume dead, almost dead animals, and they really help mitigate a lot of disease spread and that kind of stuff, okay? Detritivores, what they do is they go in and they break down stuff that is dead or waste products. So think dung beetles, think roly-polies, that kind of stuff. So those detritivores are very important. Otherwise we'd be covered in, this world would be covered in poop. All right, then we have decomposers. Decomposers are also amazing because they tend to be the kind of the hidden gems out there. They don't really get a lot of press because we don't really see them. They're usually under the ground or they're microscopic. They help break down all those nutrients and recycle them back into the soil into usable products. Think nitrogen cycle. If you haven't watched that lecture yet, just wait. So, you grew up learning about food chains. So you'll make a couple in here, obviously, just to kind of refresh, make sure you understand and remember how to do it. But your producer is where we start. Cha-ching! And you always draw your arrows moving up to the next level in the trophic cascade, right? So make sure that you draw always going from lower to higher levels up the food chain. Now, a food web is a lot more complicated because a food web shows a lot more complexity and it will take into account the things like the scavengers, the detritivores, those decomposers that food chains a lot of times don't. And you can like cross over, show cross relationships amongst different species. And like say, if you're looking at the zebra here, right, it's a primary consumer. It eats the grass, but it can be a food source for multiple organisms out on the savanna.